elusive. I have it here somewhere. Oh, okay. So this is from Aliya to Richa. So how color saturation was addressed, as all screens are differently color corrected. So Richa, if you could answer that, that would be great.
Yeah, so we usually make assumptions about different screen aspects and color aspects. So it is a limitation that we have to deal with. So we understand that this is a limitation, and hence this did not come up in our classes as a problem statement.
Hopefully that answers the question um, for Aliya. Aliya, if you do you have any follow-up questions on that? I take that silence as a no. All right. So we're gonna move on. Oh, okay.
Yeah, there is a follow-up question because when I was discussing that with my colleagues who have interviewed for my paper, they came up with very interesting ways to color collab. What do you call that? Do we correct them or do we calibrate them? Calibration.
Calibrate, yeah.
Yeah, calibrate. Yeah. So they actually, created a formula to share with all the students, and all the screens were calibrated on that same number. So that's how they tried, but still the results came up really differently when they were, the works were printed and shared digitally with the instructors. So I just wanted to, just add that they tried it through calibrating the color screens, but still that the color differences were there.
Probably something we can try later on in our future courses. So some of the students, like they had really bad connections, like hills have very remote places where these students come from. So using their phones was the biggest, to connect to classes was the biggest challenge. So we were like solving these basic issues first, and probably we couldn't reach that space where we could discuss color correction issues. But yes, something we can work upon in the future courses.
Okay. All right. Thank you for that. We're going to move on to our next question. And this comes from Professor Ramachandran, Sridhar. And the question is for Richa and Ridhi. And it goes, how did you manage conflicts and disagreements with regards to design teams? So there are a bunch of other questions there. So that's the first question. And feel free to look it up in the chat. So the second part is, did you assign team member roles, or did you let it evolve naturally within the teams? And a bit of reflection there. The reflection you mentioned about, were they team reflections and or individual reflections? And was it socially shared and privately managed? So there are three questions that I believe. Let me know if you want me to repeat that. The first question is, how did you manage conflicts and disagreement with regards to design teams?
Yes, so before actually the pandemic hit, we were experimenting with the course module in social design. So there is this approach called community-based participatory research, which stems from participatory rural appraisal. So it's basically a toolkit that we used to assess and resolve conflicts within rural settings and come on consensus. So we use these tools, plus I think assigning roles was also something which we used in conflict resolutions. And the reflections part, it was a team reflection at the end when the course was finishing. So conflict resolution, like we had many different methods of different conflict resolutions. The research and research methodology part was something where there was a lot of conflict and disagreement among the students because everybody was at a different place, and they had their different research. And so one thing was that each student in one team was made a captain of something, and they were responsible. So most conflicts come in terms of this person is not working, I am working more, in terms of teams. So that was something we tried, that each person was made captain of something, and they were solely responsible for that thing. They were supposed to make others work for that particular segment. So that was one way in which we tried to resolve conflicts. Plus, we used a lot of community-based participatory research tools through discussions and role-playing.
I guess that pretty much answered the second part of it. The third part of the question is the reflection you mentioned about, were they team reflections and or individual reflections? And was it socially shared or privately managed? I guess it's about privacy as well. Yeah. So what's your answer on that one?
Yeah, so reflections mostly were at the end of the module discussed as a team. Everybody had their own reflections of what they like, what worked for them, what did not work for them. But eventually it was discussed as a team for each one of these modules.
Yeah, and they were private sessions. They were not like, yeah, we did not put them out there for people to answer. They were, not non-recorded sessions that we held post our course was complete.
Mm. I wonder, Dr. Ramachandran, do you have any follow-up questions?
Yes, I do. Yes, I do. Just a small little comment or a question, probably. So did you, in other words, was your design evolving in the sense, once these reflections do come in order for the students to feel that they belong, was there any way of incorporating the suggestions or the changes on a dynamic basis based on what you found in the reflection? I know that's a big tall of work, but I was just curious if that's something that you're also thinking about in the future, kind of like a feed forward system where you're also dynamically changing your course modules based on the reflections.
Yes, definitely. So these courses were part of the first semester that we did online, and post that there were 2 more semesters, and the fourth one was also in this hybrid mode. So yes, it has been a very, very conscious thing. And we also within the faculty held these sessions where we were sharing these insights with each other. So yes, most
Thank
definitely.
you. Thank you. Yeah, now I'm missing the sound of birds. What happened to them?
Yeah, it's night now, so they've slept off probably.
Oh, you actually sent somebody to shoo them away.
No such thing. They've actually, I think, simmered down. It was peak evening that time, everyone coming back to their homes.
And in the chat, I see that Dr. Ramachandran has a question for Mr. Abhishek.
Yes, I have one for Mr. Akhtar too, but I'll go with the one for Abhishek at this time, and then I'll let you read the one for Mr. Akhtar. So Abhishek, a very impressive talk, very good connections. I was also trying to because you did touch upon a few of what you had listed in your slides. I'm just curious to know about more of the facets of what you could find from the Rishi method. Because the very interpretation, as you said in the very start, of guru being synonymous to teacher is flawed, because a guru is way more than what a teacher is. And that is a discussion that we have already initiated within the informatics curriculum to an extent. We've been using Socratic method, we've been looking at Greek philosophies, but we have also started to look into the Indian philosophy, especially for your future direction, since you're a PhD student. Look into literacy research. A lot of this is surfacing now, looking at the Gurukul model, looking at how the COVID-19 and the pandemic kind of transformed the process into a learning coach model. And the learning coach model kind of matches more towards some of the ancient Indian methods of apprenticeship. You stay and you learn. So it's fascinating. I was really very impressed by your presentation. So I just wanted to touch base there, since you're a PhD student, to let you know. Search Google Scholar, look for literacy research, look for Gurukul, look for those words, and you will find a lot of interesting things stem out.
Sure.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot. I think one added dimension which I'm also working around is in the same dimensions of ancient India, is that the way we used to teach our students in the Gurukuls, it was primarily cross-legged and ground seating. However, we have transitioned into a chair-based seating where everything happens on a chair. So that is also an area of inquiry which I'm currently working on, and I hope maybe in the next EDDE presentation I would be able to share something on that.
That's really nice, because a lot of that research is going on in biology, high school biology research now, where it's more hands-on. You go out, especially take field trips, and you get away from, and I think it stems from a little bit about physical education too. So I see so many overlaps. It's so interdisciplinary, but I see so many connections, like even with the Socratic method and the question and answer method. There are similarities, but there are differences too. So please keep doing what you're doing, and I will keep following your work.
Thank you.
There was a suggestion from Dr. Ramachandran for Mr. Akhtar to follow up on literature. So, all right. So at this point, we are actually opening up for those who didn't leave any question in the chat. And if you have any question, please feel free. I guess maybe the protocol would be, I am trying to scroll through the screen. I don't see any raised hands, but feel free to use the feature where you could raise your hand, as an icon. If not, just jump in. I take that silence as processing. So do we have any questions? But if not, then we will like to kind of end the Q&A question session here and pass this down to Professor Sheeraz to close the meeting. The conference. It feels like a meeting to me because I've been in so many Zoom meetings. But this is truly.
I'd just like to add that I like this format a lot. Day-long sessions are very taxing. This is so refreshing to have small pockets of information to go ahead and process, and then spend the day exploring if you have time. Very manageable, even from a user perspective. The 3 U's, this is very useful. This is user-centric, and this is very user-designed. So please continue to do or keep this conference in this format if you can.
Thank you. I was thinking about that, and I thought, this is actually quite manageable. And also sometimes when my students have to work and try to carve out time, this 2 hour and early in the morning is doable. You just have to wake up early. So
and it's something good to wake up to, right? It's something good to, because you're getting all these lovely ideas. So it's good to wake up to it as well. So
yes, and these ideas take all day to process. There's just so mind-boggling. Some of those are just giving me a lot of ideas to think about. What's my next paper gonna be?
And then all the connections that you can draw from that, right? All these little.
So on that point, I think Aliya mentions a very good point. Even the word ustad and the shagird is also a very good example of how these words have not really truly been decoded to understand the various dimensions of what these ancient learner-centric environments encompassed. So there is a movement called deschooling. If you have not looked at it, then look it up. It's a movement which is called deschooling, and it has a wonderful literature of looking at the barriers of the current methods of schooling. And it's also called decolonizing education. That's the literature it falls under, because most of what we see is because of the colonization, the generalization and standardization of the teacher-pupil definition from the West. but the decolonizing education, I think a lot of Indian scholars are also working on that. I don't remember their names on the top of my mind at this time, but I've been following that work. And then it falls under deschooling, which is kind of not the right word to be using. And that's why I prefer decolonization as a better word. But you will find literature under these two. And it applies to a lot of design, UX, UI designs, even to a lot of art design. So please look it up. I think you will enjoy reading those literature.
And Ridhi mentions in the comments about the Japanese and their terminology of sensei and senpai, which also kind of equates to a similar.
Exactly. There is so much in the Western literature that has suppressed the Eastern literature definitions. So we are slowly unraveling those. So please continue doing that.
Yeah.
The character, I'm not sure what's the kanji that they write for sensei, but if it comes from the Chinese character of xiansen, xiansen is how you would address like Mr., right? You would say xiansen. So if you write the character, it means the first character is before, and then sen is birth. So you're actually addressing the person who was born before you. So you're calling him, you were born before me, therefore you have seniority. So I respect you. So
you're
it's
probably
actually,
wiser. Yeah.
Exactly. I'm just curious if Dr. Srikumar had been around to see if calligraphy has addressed in bringing the essence of guru in the calligraphic world, or the essence of sensei in the calligraphic world. Just curious, but I don't see him around today.
Yep. Okay, so with that, shall we move on to our final closing remarks?
All right. Thank you very much, everyone. This was really a very invigorating and very wonderful 3 days that we all had here. And I will, of course, take this opportunity to thank all the speakers for sharing their insights, which was really, again, as we were just mentioning, for me, they've been just points in my brain now, and those points. So the more points you have, the more connections you make, right? So this is really amazing. And of course, the audience for keeping it so dynamic through all the questions and comments and discussions. It was really fantastic. Thank you very much, people. And on behalf of Casey, Purba, Mandar, and myself, thank you very much for being here and making this an amazing space. I will also take this opportunity to thank Indiana University Southeast and IDC School of Design, IIT Bombay, for organizing this conference, giving us this opportunity to organize this. And I can talk about myself, but I'm sure for all of us, this is like really, this has fueled me with inspiration to take on the upcoming term, which is for me starting next week. So perfect timing. Some thoughts as we end. The last 2.5 years have in a lot of ways looked like a downer, and it sure was while we were going through all these very unprecedented tough times. But I would like to think that it will hold promise for the future. We know through history that past pandemic situations have brought with them a shift in how we work, how we learn, how we do things. And it has changed our perception of what the normal really looks like. From the Black Death in the early 1300s to the Spanish flu in the 1900s, pandemics have changed the course of history. And we are here making history right now, which is kind of feels amazing, feels strange, but it is an opportunity. Right, we are here making history. Our speakers today shared with us some wonderful thoughts once again. And again, I saw this common thread when I was listening to them, which was the importance of communication, the importance of collaboration, the importance of being empathetic in terms of how we teach, how we learn, how we design. And along with that, there was an evidence of how tech played its role in everything that we did in the last 2.5 years. So Professor Abhishek, thank you so much for your fantastic presentation. I loved the little stories that you had. Again, the power of storytelling for human beings is supreme. And I really enjoyed how you connected those stories to how we learn in an interdisciplinary way, the creative outlook, and having a solution-based mindset. learning through examples, such important points to make. And I love the quote that you shared by J. Cross, which says, conversation is the most powerful tech ever invented. How fantastic is that? That line alone can just we can have a discussion, like a day-long discussion on that. And that conversation has no boundaries and it has no limits. And that's exactly what we're trying here through EDDE, to make our conversations beyond boundaries. Right. So thank you very much for giving us that really interesting points to ponder on. The importance of questioning, the importance of curiosity, and building on opportunities to have conversations. So important. Thank you again. And Professor Ridhi and Richa, thank you very much for your fantastic presentation on the role of collaborative online learning. And you had some really interesting tech platforms that you shared with us, from Miro to Jamboards to Figma. And yeah, we've all a lot of us have had the opportunity to incorporate those into our classrooms. And we realized how important they were, again, to help students collaborate and to help have this more dynamic classroom. And I really enjoyed when you I got what you were saying when you were talking about how the teacher of today is not just somebody who is on top or who has a leadership role per se. Teaching is not a top-down initiative anymore. In a classroom, we are more of a facilitator. And it was really interesting when you said that the onus of learning now in today's world rests on both the person who is teaching as well as the person who is being taught. So that really opens up a lot of discussion and a lot of thinking in terms of our role and the role of the receiver. So the role of the person who's communicating as well as the role of the person who's receiving, and vice versa. So thank you very much again for your thoughts and for your talk on that. Professor Haseen and Ram Kumar, fantastic. I love the research. Empathy is just so important for us as designers, so important for us as educators, so important for us as human beings in a world, the kind of world we are living in. So thank you for touching on that aspect. Thank you for doing this really important work on this particular idea, and touching on the whole idea of futures thinking and how important that is for us designers to really put our thinking caps on towards that, and the idea that the future is already here. So yes, we are in this really crucial and important space right now, or at least I would like to think, and it's going to change the way our normal looks like. So what is the future going to hold for us, and where are we going with all of that? Those are some discussions that are really powerful and important at this point. This whole idea of coming from those discussions, when I was going through this last 1.5 hours, this whole idea of tech and how important technology has been for us during these times, like we probably don't realize how much it has creeped, or we do realize how much it has really creeped into our life. With the current scenario, digital adoption really took on a quantum leap for most of us. Even when we now see ourselves in the hybrid setting, it is kind of going to be a part of us. Remote work, dependence on technology is something we really experienced big time. And though even before COVID, it was not unknown for a lot of us to be a designer or a teacher or be a working person sitting physically in one part of the world, but having clients or having work 10,000 miles away. Some of us were already doing that. But this pandemic situation we found ourselves in, it kind of forced us to take our lives online. And this will likely be an impetus, and it will give this shift more momentum, and the repercussions are definitely going to be profound. What the last 2.5 years has done, it has come and it has removed one main barrier that we humans actually faced to a digital future. And that was our own frame of mind and our own attitudes. It just pushed us into that realm where we didn't have a choice. We didn't have the time to think whether we wanted to do that or not. We just had to. So it was a push towards that direction, a direction that we were already going in a lot of ways. So we were forced to change our ways. We were forced to look at things differently, to work, learn, and live digitally, which made us realize that it could be done that way. That was a challenge. It was not devoid of challenges, but it was a realization that, yes, there is another way of doing things. And what it kind of did is we now realize that it's kind of given us a choice. It has opened up this whole notion of choice. And we now have the power to choose, which is kind of, again, for me, a profound thought, because suddenly you have a choice, you have an option, you have autonomy on how we want to work. And this notion, in my opinion, itself will be pretty far reaching. Having said that, while we look at tech and while we look at the importance of the role that tech has played in our lives in the last 2.5 years, we cannot ignore the equity issues that it has brought with them. I think it was Professor Richa who pointed out that a lot of students didn't have good internet access, or they were not able to log in. Even in our part of the world, we have a bit of those issues, but there is a bigger world out there. 2/3 of the world's school-age children, that is 1.3 billion children between the age of 3 and 17, did not have internet connection in the last 2.5 years. 63% of the 17 to 24-year-olds, the kind of age groups that we generally teach at college and university, did not have access to the internet. This is according to UNICEF and ITU. This lack of connectivity, it doesn't just limit children, and it doesn't just limit young people's ability to connect online, but it really prevents them from competing in the modern economy. It isolates them from the world. And school closures for the last 2.5 years has really kind of, it has hindered the next generation and their future in a lot of the part of the world. So that is a thought that one kind of needs to also go with as we go along with this whole idea. So again, coming back to that whole notion of choice now will, I guess, have a role to play here in our world. Owing to this design, this whole idea of tech and the digital realm, our world is becoming smaller each day. We realize that, I think, more in these last 2.5 years than ever before, how small our world really is. Globalization is definitely evolving, and along with that, we need to evolve as designers and design educators. Design as a field is not inherently local, nor is it regulated like the fields of law or medicine. And it is a service that can be easily exported or imported, and it is increasingly finding its way to globalize itself and to expand its horizon. And it's a really interesting time and space to be in. And that was one of our impetus for this group to come up with the EDDE organizations to come up with this conference. And it is our hope as the core group that this conference will help and move us in looking at design from a more global lens, of course, by never moving our finger from the pulse of the local, as I had also said earlier, but to sort of understand how people in different parts of the world, how they conduct themselves in the classroom, how they teach in their classrooms, and to learn and to gain from each other. In the future, we definitely plan to continue holding these conferences with the key purpose of discourse on how to plan, how to teach, and how to learn across courses, across disciplines, and of course, across borders. So fingers crossed on that. We will be around. And I would also like to share at this point that we will be producing an e-publication of the papers that were shared in this conference, and our website will remain live with all the updates, etc. So as we go along, so really excited for that. And so yes, continue to watch this space. We are going to be there. So in the end, I will just end with this quote that we at EDDE really hope we will be able to contribute towards. And it is by Charles Darwin, when he said that in the long history of humankind and animal kind too, those who learned to collaborate and improvised most effectively have prevailed. So with that, I hope that this can be a time for us to really sort of share our knowledge, share our information, and have a collaborative space in which we can all learn from each other. Thank you very much once again, people. Thank you so much for being here. And thank you so much for making these 3 days amazing.